Hi, this is Paul, and I had breakfast actually, this morning with my friend John Van. John is over there on, I'm dyslexic, I don't know, right and left. On the one side by the arrow where it says John Van, and he's been my partner in crime in a lot of this stuff and that we've done. He's the one that prompted me into meetups, and he was pushing for some other things this morning. And he's often up here in Sacramento, but he lives down in Chino, California, in Southern California. And I visited and helped him launch his meetup down in Southern California. And that night, we spent the day also with Mr. Reagan, and I did that interview with Mr. Reagan on his channel. And I still have to I still owe Mr. Reagan an interview on my channel, which we'll do sometime. So that was a terrific time we had in Southern California, and John got his meetup started. He was away for a little while and is back, and so is trying to get it built up again. But one of the things that we were doing today is talking about meetups and some certain facets of it. And John he said, there's really four groups. And I thought, wow, that's really good. He articulated it well. And later I got home, I thought, wow, but he missed a group. And so I told him I'd make a quick little video about it. It might not be quick if I ramble too much. Facets of the Jordan Peterson movement. And I think there are five main facets, and I'll get into some of the sub facets from it. The five main facets: the looking to launch crowd, or as John has always called them, the buckos. The religious crowd, the atheists, the what I call the doctors of philosophy, and the politicos. And now many of us, I think, have multiple elements of this in us, and this is part of what makes Jordan Peterson so interesting. One of the earlier videos I did was likening Jordan Peterson to some of the dynamics of Jim and Pam on Friends, and actually Peterson tweeted that video. This was this was quite early on when I was making videos, but now watching these groups coalesce, reading the comment section, watching people migrate in and out of the comment section, watching who's watching what other videos. So Mr. Reagan is kind of an interesting piece of this because he very much focuses on the political aspect, and I very much focus on the religious aspect. So there's just multiple elements at play here. And the first group I call the looking to launch, or the buckos. My wife sometimes calls them the basement dwellers, but I got a letter from someone from the United Kingdom who said, "What do you mean by people who live in the basement?" And actually, I was living in my mother's basement when I was in Massachusetts recently, when I was for the death of my sister. But these are many of the people, not these particular people here, because I know these people, which is why I took that picture. But many of the people who come up to Jordan Peterson at the VIP section after his book tour, who will come up to Jordan Peterson and talk about how he rescued them, how they've followed his rules for life, and how they've started telling the truth, or at least stopped lying, and they've cleaned their room, and they've really taken Jordan Peterson to heart, and this has made a big difference in their lives. And so that's clearly one aspect of his following. But that's by no means the only aspect. And many of the people who come to meetups they're successful, they're well put together, their families are in order, they've managed to marry and stay married, and so on and so forth. So there's the Jordan Peterson following is not just this, what I'll call the looking to launch segment of his following. Christians have been a big element of his following, and I clump these under the religious because they're not all Christian. Obviously, the Orthodox and the Roman Catholics with the neo-sacramentalism, and Jonathan Pageau's contributions that he's made, and I've been working through a lot of Jonathan Pageau's ideas lately, and thinking them through, and thinking about what Jordan Peterson is bringing to the conversation in terms of how the church will finally, I'm struggling with the right word, finally not subsume modernity. That might be the right word. How the church will finally subsume modernity, and it will be I really want to resist getting too Hegelian, but it will be kind of a synthesis, and that's why this neo-sacramentalism is underway. And actually, I think, per my conversation with Julian yesterday, I think actually we are in the process. The Protestant Reformation has been the process of the creation and probably consummation of modernity, which is atheism. and then via this next, probably the next couple of hundred years, the subsumption of modernity by the church, which is going to arrive at a new synthesis where there was corruption in the sacramentalism that the Protestant Reformation really pushed back upon. But then as the Protestant Reformation reacts and perhaps overreacts, it gets too theoretical, too Gnostic, too disconnected from the stuff of life. And so we kind of come full circle where we can, where the where Protestantism can work out its issues together with the Roman Catholics, because that's really where the Protestant Reformation was, and what we look forward to, and I think this is at the heart of Protestantism, is looking forward to a 500, 600, 700 years process of reform whereby Protestants will no longer protest. And then we'll have to address the great schism between the Roman Catholics and the Orthodox. And the goal, obviously, is the final unification of the church to fulfill Jesus' prayer in the Gospel of John, that his followers would be one. Now, we're all working through that. And when I say we, and again, I keep mentioning follow the we's, when I say we, I mean all of us over great periods of time, the people of God in the church. And so it could be that at this moment, and this isn't just Jordan Peterson, for the last 50, 60 years, there have been elements of this at play very much in trying to work through sacramentalism and how it actually functions. And so much of this revolves around the Eucharist, the host, the Lord's Supper, communion, and figuring out the bread and the wine and what that means and what that is when Jesus says, "This is my body." And actually, I'm going to hopefully have a conversation with Len Vanderzee, who's writing a paper on this. And the CRC people who listen to this will recognize that name. But right here, this is what we're, in a sense, we're working through, is all of the issues of the Protestant Reformation in terms of physicality. And I don't want to make this whole video about that, but I've been thinking a lot about that. Julian and I talked about a bit about that yesterday. So Christians, and again, it's Mr. Plinkett. We might not know this in our conscious space, but our brains know it, and our collective consciousness knows it. And so these are the issues that we're working through, the issues of the Protestant Reformation that exploded in the Protestant Reformation, but might not have been exactly what the Reformation was about. And it's why the Protestant reformers couldn't come to consensus around the Eucharist in the way that perhaps Roman Catholics and Orthodox, I don't know either of their theology well enough to understand how that is in play between them. But that long-standing sacramentalism kind of, explodes into the Protestant Reformation, the corruption in the sacramental system, and so on and so forth. So Peterson's in all of that with Orthodox, Roman Catholics, and Protestants. But now evangelicals, now, again, if you listen to my conversation with Julian yesterday, am I evangelical? What is an evangelical? That's really hard to nail down. But part of what we've seen with Peterson is new wine and no wineskins, and seeing people who moved away from Christianity coming back to it. That got my attention, and it got me interested in saying, where can these people go? Who is going to help these people? So that's really where my channel had its genesis, and what I've been doing. And so that's an element of this religious following of Peterson. And then, as John Van said, the bored and the wayward, those who had just church wasn't doing it, wasn't cutting it. They listened to plenty of sermons and it didn't make sense. And now they hear Jordan Peterson talking about the Bible and it starts to connect with them. So what's that about? And that's again, I think, post-Christians revivifying Christianity for some of them. And I've heard many of those people have come to me and told me stories like that, and that sometimes meant an adjustment. Maybe they worked more towards an Orthodox church, or they reconnected with their Roman Catholic church, or they reconnected with their Protestant church. But Christians are very much a big piece of this Jordan Peterson movement. But then there's the non-Christian camp. If you listen to David Fuller and Ali, they pretty much in their men's work had moved away from Christianity, and Jordan Peterson, with respect to narrative, kind of brought it back into the forefront with them. And some of my other conversations that I've had with people who looked into Buddhism or yoga or psychedelics now have renewed interest in Christianity because of Jordan Peterson, or at least in some of the elements of Christianity. And if you listen to David Fuller's conversation with Jonathan Peugeot, you can hear David Fuller just wrestling, David Fuller from Rebel Wisdom, David Fuller wrestling with, okay, they're seeing elements of Christianity, but they're concerned about Christian exclusivism and how does this work with the other traditions, and so they're wrestling with those issues. And so the religious are obviously a big part of the Jordan Peterson movement. Another group that John identified were the atheists, and John said, I'm glad I gave you this idea because I know you're going to develop it and you're going to nuance it and you're going to broaden it a little bit. And I said, yeah, amongst the atheists, there's really the anti-theists in the Sam Harris tribe. And then there's some like Adam, who has the Adam Friended channel and who has the Think Club channel, really approaching it from a sociology of religion, where Adam is a determined nemesis of Mr. Rationality Rules, and Adam just keeps going at him. And every time Adam does a debunking of a debunking video, I just laugh my head off because it's too funny. Mouthy Buddha did a video early on, is Sam Harris losing his audience to Jordan Peterson? And Mouthy Buddha does really beautiful videos, very artistic, very visual, very elegant, and that was very much a video worth watching. So there's very much a strong atheist element to the Jordan Peterson following. Then there's the group I'm calling the doctors of philosophy. Now, PhDs are offered in many degrees, and a PhD, those initials basically mean Doctor of Philosophy, and this goes back to the time in which philosophy was assumed to be the mother of all disciplines, and all disciplines are beneath philosophy. And Peterson is very much bringing an interdisciplinary focus to this, where he brings in literature and history and philosophy and obviously psychology, and he brings all of these things together and tries to unify and integrate them in a cross-disciplinary way, putting the whole world back together. Now, I've also talked to a number of timid academics who've been writing me emails but don't want to do a conversation with me on video because YouTube is a place for people with not a lot to lose. Well, these people do have things to lose. They don't necessarily have tenure, and they will get in trouble in academic circles. And I've had a number of academics come to me and, in a sense, want to talk in private. It's kind of like Nicodemus coming in the middle of the night, because they're academics and they're interested in Jordan Peterson and they want to explore his ideas, but Jordan Peterson is anathema in left-wing academic communities, so they can't talk about him. Or Jordan Peterson is anathema in certain conservative Christian communities and they can't talk about him. So the doctors of philosophy are an element of the group that's secretly working through the Peterson stuff. And I think there are some frustrated philosopher kings. I think Rachel Fulton Brown is a frustrated philosopher king / queen, as she very much wants to. I think she very much would love to be living Jordan Peterson's life in terms of seeing academic work come to full popular embrace, being a public intellectual. Jordan Peterson has become one of the most successful public intellectuals of 2017, 2018. And that's a remarkable feat for an academic to now have such incredible popular appeal, where he can be traveling around the world filling up concert halls for 50 or 100 or $150 a seat, just to have people listen to his stream of consciousness. And in a sense, I'm going to talk about this in the next video I do on the meetup on January 22 in San Jose. But he's really writing his new book. He's doing office work on stage, thinking out loud. And I think many academics look at this and this is their dream, and Jordan Peterson is living their dream. And so I think some have some envy, and envy is usually a mixture of, well, you know what envy is. It's a mixture of desire to replace and frustration that they haven't been there. So the doctors of philosophy are another element of the Jordan Peterson movement, and then also the Politicos. They're Peterson keeps talking about politics, and he keeps talking in political forums and political venues, and that's where the hit pieces come from for the most part. Politics has grown far too large, as David Brooks repeatedly notes, and I think David Brooks is exactly right. Politics should be an aspect of our lives, but it should not be our religion, and it should not dominate all the rest of our lives. We should have friends that are across political aisles, and we should have churches that have multiple political tribes within them. Politics should not become our God, and should not become our religion, and should not become what life is about. And maybe that makes me a conservative. Mr. Reagan kept wanting, are you conservative? And it's like, I'm too much of a nuance academic philosopher type to really want to embrace that label, because obviously in some ways I'm conservative, and in other ways I'm quite open and liberal or even progressive. And so I'm a mixture of all of these things. But when Jordan Peterson sprang onto the political sphere, this was someone who wouldn't back down to institutional pressure. And yeah, you can take my job. You can, Jordan Peterson, if you keep pushing him, he'll push back. And I think he was instantly a hero to people on the political right who have felt themselves maybe not losing politically, but losing sociologically in the political sphere. And so I think, there's a big element of Jordan Peterson's rise that very much has resonance in the age of Trump. But he is very unlike Trump in that here's a man with obviously a successful 30-year marriage. He does not. I can only imagine what Donald Trump would do on the kind of tour that Jordan Peterson is doing. But Jordan Peterson's wife comes with him, and she's a partner in his work. And so that's a big element of this. So while he emerges in the age of Trump, he's quite unlike Trump. He has intellectual credibility, and he's both forthright and honest. Donald Trump is forthright, but few would argue that he's terribly honest with his words. Jordan Peterson's admonition, tell the truth or at least don't lie. Donald Trump will pretty much say whatever it is he wants to say, and you can look at Scott Adams' videos and figure that out. So, but with many of these things, there are multiple nuances and resonances. Oh, I didn't finish that slide. Hold on, I got to pause because I wanted to put the list back up. So here's the list again. The looking to launchers, the religious, the atheists, the doctors of philosophy, and the politicos. And many people have multiple aspects of this in them and different mixtures of it. And so John Van Donk and I were talking about meetups and how, there might be differentiation within meetups in terms of people's motivation. My meetups have tended to be the religious, philosophical, some looking to launch, not a lot of politicos, some atheists, but these have been kind of the mixture of my meetups, and different meetups are going to have different mixtures of these things. But part of what we've noticed is that so often Jordan Peterson, people see themselves in him, and it's partly because his work touches on all of these aspects, but in a highly integrated way. So that's what John and I talked about at breakfast this morning, and I thought it was an important conversation, and I wanted to make a video about it, and I wanted to post it and put it up. So there you go. Have at it in the comments. Let me know what you think.